Okay, well, thank you very much, and sorry everyone for this technical problem. We did a trial the day before yesterday, and everything was fine. So we couldn't understand very well what happened. But anyway, let's go through this. Thank you very much to IAVE for this opportunity. I'm very happy to present this work. And this idea came when I was doing my master thesis on social economics, and because of the experiment that I had of 5 years as the manager of the EDP corporate volunteering program, I always try to find stronger arguments to defend our program internally, and this thesis is a little bit about it. I tried to quantify the benefits of the corporate volunteering program, and when I couldn't, I went on to find some kind of qualification for the value that it creates, some kind of arguments also to make that stronger. So going into the slides in the presentation, when you see this slide, I ask you to please try and figure out what this is. It's not an easy thing, and my idea of presenting this slide to you is this is a little bit of what the value of corporate volunteering is. Something that it has a lot of lines and shades, but we don't understand very much what it is. So what I've tried to do with my work was to explore the different value aspects of volunteering so that we could come to at least to this kind of picture. We still cannot see the faces of people, but we know a little bit what's out there, and we can see some lines of the people there, and hopefully I hope that someday in the future we can move a lot further on to arrive to something like this. This is a very good picture of volunteering, and at the current moment we can only have something like this. So moving forward, first I began to study some value models. We have millions of dollars invested in corporate volunteering. A lot of the big companies have it. There's little knowledge of its value. And I found two quantitative methods for volunteering. They are not for corporate volunteering itself, but they are for volunteering as general in countries. It's the Haldane Model for the UK and the IPM Model for Tasmania. And they are very interesting documents and work that has been done that I strongly recommend to a good reading. So we found that there were, in my thesis, I found that there's no specific model for corporate volunteering. And this leads to a lack of arguments for its expansion. So my research question was, how much value does corporate volunteering generate? So here I will explain the two quantitative models that we found. This is the Haldane model, which is the one that I worked more upon. And it has this onion of value that as Mr. Andrew Haldane from the Bank of England calls it. And when we start at the center of the onion, we can more easily get to some numbers and some of the value that we have. And the further away we go from the center, the grayer the definitions and the numbers get. And so in the center we have the labor input, which is the number of volunteers and the number of hours that we have. Outside of that, we have the economic value, which is the economic value of the volunteer services, which means it's the value that my painted wall or that my arranged garden or that my visit or that my audit had for the recipients, for the beneficiaries. There's a methodology international for this from the International Labour Organization, and we will see how this applies to the EDP case. Then we have the private value, which includes the value for individuals and organizations. And then Further away from the center, we have the social value or the value for society, which is even harder to monetize. And it's the set of public goods that are generated by volunteering. The other model is the model of the Institute of Project Management. Instead of having this onion, it has 4 types of capital. It has physical capital, which is the saleable goods, the human capital, which is the personal wealth and psychological well-being and knowledge and skills, social capital, and symbolic capital. Well, because this model of the IPM is very demanding in terms of data, and because of our shortage of data and also of time, I focused more on the Haldane model. And hopefully in the future someone can simplify a little bit more of the IPM model so that we can also try to use it more. Besides these quantitative models, I found some qualitative ones, and they try to give an idea of these benefits of corporate volunteering for employees, for businesses, for the community. And I found some 3 or 4 sources that give us some data on reputation, on staff attraction, on well-being and stuff like that. So these are the different models, the quantitative ones, the qualitative ones. The majority of them was applied in English-speaking countries, mainly the UK and also Tasmania. The qualitative ones are usually the results come from surveys that have been done. And then I went to try and find and create a new model that could be applied to corporate volunteering. So I've took the Haldane model and improved it to fit the volunteering, the corporate volunteering. What we did was we split the private value between non-corporate and corporate, because it's important for companies to understand their share of value. And also we have input, besides the input labor, we have put the costs here in, which allows us to have some return on investment idea. So this is how the model compares with the existing one of Haldane. It includes the investment and opportunity costs. It separates between corporate and non-corporate private value. It's complementary with qualitative methods, and it has a lot more private value dimensions that we found important to include. So anyone has any questions on this part? Any hands raised? The presentation will be a little bit, we'll have a lot of content, so it's important for us to have some small stops on the way so that we can breathe a little bit. So if you have any questions, please just let me know.
I don't see any hands raised right now or any questions in the question box. So
okay.
I think we can go on.
So we'll move forward. So this is what this was a new model that I tried to implement, and then I applied it to the EDP case study. So why did I choose EDP? Well, first because it's the company I'm in. The available of data is very good. It's primary data, which means it's direct from the source. EDP is also a mid-sized global company. It has around 12,000 workers. It's been in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for a long time, and it has skill-based and hands-on activity, which is pretty important. Here below, you can see some of our infographics that we have. This is a little bit more on our infographics. We already had some determination of the economic value, which was around here, around €500,000. So now going deeper in these layers of value. First, in this first part, we'll see the input labor costs and economic value from the EDP case. So the input labor costs in the program, They come from the working hours granted. This is all the numbers are for 2015, which was when I did the thesis. And in 2015, we had a little bit more than 17,000 hours granted. And we know the value of the hour of each worker. So we have this valuation by the company, and we know the exact value of the granted hours that we have. And then we add this to the budget that we have that has a centralized part and a decentralized part. And the total investment that EDP made was almost 800,000 euros in that particular year. Now, going up to the next layer for the economic value, what we did was we have these working hours that were granted, and then we categorize them. This means that we separate them according to the type of work that is done. We separate the teachers from the painters, from the builders, from the board members, and all of these categories, they have a cost, an average cost that is defined by our Portuguese national body of statistics. And because this is a methodology made by International Labour Organization, I'm pretty sure that you will find a table for your own country or countries where you work. So with these hours in categories, we multiplied all the categories by the average replacement cost, and then we found the economic value estimate for Portugal, which was almost 80,000 euros. Because we could not do this for all the countries where we are, and because the activities are about the same, more or less the same that we have in other countries, we tried to use this average also for other countries. So we found the average hourly value for Portugal, and then we assumed similarities with all the other countries, and we came up with the economic value for the EDP of almost 127,000 euros in 2015. This should be the amount of money that would pay for all the work done, the services done by the volunteers. Okay? Any questions so far?
George, actually, I have a question. When you presented this model within EDP, can you tell us the reaction to it, or do you want to talk about that later?
Well, yeah, we can talk about it now. I mean, everyone was very surprised about these values. I mean, because we can't have a notion on this. Once we get to put some numbers, even if they are a little bit raw and have a lot of uncertainty attached to them, having numbers gives you a lot better idea, a clearer idea of what we're talking about. So this was it was a bit of a surprise when we did this internally for the first time.
Great.
Okay. So moving on.
Okay, I don't see any other questions right now, but I'm sure there will be later.
Okay, so moving further, we have the private value part and the social value part. Now, this private value is the core of this work, and this is the part that will take us a little bit more time. So, entering in the private value, we have considered 8 aspects of value, which were the most important that we found. And we started up with the enhanced well-being. And how did we manage to get a value on the well-being for volunteers? Well, we used the well-being valuation approach by Mr. Fujiwara, who developed this well-being valuation approach in the UK, and that is now used across UK public bodies to control policy results. It's in the White Book for Policy Results in the UK, from what I remember, and it's a very good method of placing values on things that are not in the market. What they do is they have a lot of data that they gather up, and they try to monetize what would be a life increase with this activity. They have this not only for volunteering, but they have a lot of on housing and a lot of social policies. So if you look for Fujiwara on the internet, or this document of HACT, which is dedicated to housing, it has a lot of value to try and estimate the good results of social policy. In terms of health benefits, we know that they are big, but we still couldn't monetize them, couldn't reach a value. But still, in terms of qualification, we know that in the UK, the results on health are huge. I mean, we're talking always of billions of euros and pounds, and association with the output losses, with health and social care costs and human costs. So we know that if corporate volunteering brings in still a slight improvement in this field, it would have tremendous potential to make a big difference and to create a lot of value. So we cannot say how much does corporate volunteering benefit this, but we know that there's big potential for it. Fujiwara also worked on this, and he found that the well-being benefit from the relief of depression or anxiety was worth around 47,000 euros per year. Moving on to other parts, we have the increased employability, and this is an area which my work found a little bit of some small surprises. Volunteering has a significant but weak effect on employability. Even the evidence on job retention is weaker, and volunteering appears to have 0 to even negative effects on wage progression. And this is explained a little bit because of what I would call the missionary effect, because the employers know that the person is very engaged in the work that he's doing, and that there's a big part of non-financial salary that is important. So the financial part of it gets deprioritized because we know we have someone that really loves to work there. So it's sometimes they don't get their progression as easily as if it was someone who was more moved by the financial factor. Also, interesting, Deloitte found that 82% of people hiring were more likely to choose a candidate that had volunteering experience. And this is also very interesting. And also a big majority was willing to overlook some CV flaws when the candidate had volunteer work. In terms of increased productivity, we couldn't find also a number, but there's a study here from Oswald from 2009 that showed that we could have 12% greater productivity in performing a paid piece rate task if people were more happy. This is that big idea of happiness promotes productivity. Well, we couldn't do this directly for EDP, but still, just to get a notion, we found that if for the volunteers, if for the 20% almost volunteers that EDP had, if they were to increase their productivity in the same way, we would be talking about something like 21 million euros in 2015 in increased productivity. So we don't know how much this might have been, because we don't know the productivity of the EDP workers by themselves. But if we could just make a guess estimate, just have an order of magnitude, we will be talking about around 20 million euros or so. In terms of staff attraction, we couldn't reach a number also, but then again, in qualitative terms, 35% of the employees would accept a 15% cut in their pay to work for a company committed to CSR. And this shows that the non-financial part of the salary is very important. So, and this is also important for the millennial recruits. Around 60% said that they were more likely to contribute to a company's commitment to community. So, this community engagement of the company and of the corporate volunteering programs is important for the staff attraction and staff retention. So I think it's questions now. Anyone has any questions?
We do have some questions, George. One question is, you mentioned that having volunteering on your CV helps people get hired, even to the point where they might overlook a lack of certain skills. Did you find any evidence of hands-on volunteering versus skills-based volunteering? Was there any difference in that?
No, on this this study made by the Social Market Foundation for the UK doesn't give us more information on that. They were just comparing volunteering and non-volunteering. They didn't went to the detail of being hands-on or not.
And we have another question about evidence on employee retention. You mentioned it briefly, but can you say how much volunteering helped with retention?
No.
Just that it did.
Yes, well, the retention depends a lot on the type of company that we're talking about.
Right.
And the type of work that we're talking about naturally, but I couldn't find specific numbers. All the numbers that I could found are here also in the slides and also in my paper, but still I haven't found anything on that. I don't know if some more recent work from 2017 or so could already have some new data on that. Okay.
I know that Emerging World had done a study on this, and Eva from Credit Suisse is on the phone. Perhaps later in the program, when we get to more Q&A, she can talk to us about that. But it's an interesting issue.
Okay, so moving a little bit onward, we still have the skills development part, which we managed to reach a number, and this is one of the interesting parts here of the whole work. First, in this slide, we have some strong arguments. I mean, 96% of the managers believe that it's possible to gain workplace skills from volunteering, which means almost all the managers believe that volunteering can bring skills development. Also, there's a very interesting study from Wilson and Hicks that found that volunteering was a highly cost-effective way to develop certain core competencies. And he even matched the investment in that the skills development in training programs internally, and also in volunteering. And he found that the value for supporting volunteering per person and the value for training per person was almost the same thing, and they were very, very approximate to each other. So he says that volunteering it's a highly cost-effective way. It's good for costs when we're talking about costs, but also volunteering has a lot of spillover effects with well-being, as we have seen here, with health benefits, with reputation, with a lot of stuff that classroom training traditional way doesn't have. So also the employees, they say that they learn a lot of communication skills with volunteering, and also the use of initiative and problem-solving abilities. Only 5% of the volunteers think that they don't develop any skills at all. Moving now to EDP's case. Let me see. Okay, so what we have in EDP is that we have a little bit more than 17,000 hours in training leadership, and also in the same amount for communication and interpersonal relationships. We found the average hourly cost of this training internally here with our university, and we've reached a total amount for these two areas alone of almost 1 million euros that the company spent. Now, on the volunteering side, we went and we picked up the activities that had more skill development, let us say, components. So we went for the leadership skills and communication skills. For the leadership, we went to these two campaigns, Desafio do Bem, and It's Up to Us, management team, in which people have to lead projects and campaigns. And we also did a survey for the management team, and almost everyone said that they would recommend participating as a way to develop skills. And 80% of them said it was better or much better than traditional company training in classrooms. So this was very important for us to understanding that there's really room here to try and put some of the resources that we have in terms of training into volunteering and its training aspects. For the communication skills, we went for junior achievement that some of you already know. And if we could also monetize the amount of hours that people spend on volunteering with junior achievement, that would go for this amount here. So gathering up the amount of money that the leadership skills volunteering and the communication skills volunteering has, we would be talking about around 185,000 euros in terms of skills development. This is assuming that volunteering has the same hourly effect as traditional classroom company training, which is a very important thing that we need to have further studies on this. But still, it gives us an idea that sometimes hands-on skill development through volunteering can be important and can be even sometimes more effective than classroom. So for the future, it's important to compare the training through volunteering and the training through traditional classroom programs. Any questions on this?
I find that very interesting that and surprising that volunteering creates more skills in the minds of employees than traditional training. I wonder if any companies are flipping their investment more to volunteering than to traditional training. Have you seen any evidence of that? Or have you heard?
No, not even in this comparison between having the skill developed through traditional training or through volunteering. I haven't seen any studies except this one from Wilson and Hicks on that I mentioned before, that compares both of them, and that comes to the conclusion that it's cost-effective way to develop through volunteering. But there's still no more detail than this.
It's interesting. We had some lunch roundtables of GCVC members last year, and we had one in Southern California where one of our members mentioned that they also found that it was more cost-effective and more productive to have their employees in skills-based volunteering programs than in traditional training. So that supports your finding there.
Yeah, well, those findings are very important to be communicated, because that is also a strong argument to push this forward.
Great, thank you, George.
Okay, so moving on. we have only two more parts here in private corporate volunteering. We are around 80% of the whole presentation. So in terms of increased engagement and reputation and credibility, we couldn't find ways to reach a final value on this, but we found several strong arguments on each of them. I mean, 90% of the companies that measure the connection between volunteer participation and employee engagement found a positive correlation between them, which is something that we usually talk about. We don't know if it's volunteering that generates engagement or if it's engagement that generates volunteering, but either way, it's important that if we want to have engagement, it's important also to have volunteering somehow. Also, some studies suggest that the profitability can go higher when the employees are more engaged, and that can be 16 or 18%, depending a little bit on what we have. In terms of EDP, we made a feedback survey on one of our Christmas campaigns, and almost 100% of the participants were proud that the company had this campaign. And this is a little bit of an indirect measurement of the alignment with the company. In terms of reputation and credibility, we have a little bit more general data. We know that the vast majority of customers are more likely to buy from a business that acts to improve society. Here at EDP, in our Christmas campaign, we know that our partners in the campaign, in the end, 53% of them had an improved image of the company. So having these Christmas campaigns with our local partners is also a way to improve the company image in society, although we cannot put a number on it. So now reaching a little bit more to the end, this is the summary of what we've talked about, of the private value, the non-corporate and the corporate. And now for the social value, we found a way to have a very rough estimate of the social value. And what we did was we studied we studied the cost benefit of some social projects in the UK and also in Portugal. And we found that these social projects had a lot of different returns, going from 2.5 to double figure. So what we did was we chose the lowest one, the most conservative multiplier that we found, and we applied it to the investment that EDP has on volunteering. And this made us reach to a social value of around 2 million euros. This is, of course, a very rough and very, I don't know, very, it's just an estimate. It's at best, it's a fundamented guess of a number that we could try and reach and signalize. Any questions on this?
Yes, we have a question here. Let's see. How do EDP employees perceive the corporate volunteering program?
Well, we have some internal surveys on that, and the perception is very good. We have around 20% staff participation. It's been a year and a half since I'm no longer managing the program itself. I'm now in new with new functions and tasks, but it's well perceived. It has a lot to grow, especially in some countries. But and here in terms of Portugal, which is where we have our main staff, we have around 55% of the EDP staff is in Portugal. Our program is one of the best here in the country, at least.
Great, it sounds good. Jorge, can you explain how? I know the social value estimate is broad and a lot of assumptions were made. Could you just go through one more time how you came to that social value estimate? Because that's the piece that members are really, really having trouble with.
Well, because it's so difficult, we could only do this in a very rough and broad way, as you said. So we found several projects, social projects, that have cost-benefit analysis. And that cost-benefit analysis tells us that per each euro that was invested in that social project, X euros came out the other end in terms of social benefits. Because we have some social projects that have this ROI analysis. So what we did was we went for the lowest ROI that we could find. So we tried to be the more conservative as possible. And later you will see, when we put these into context, these results, you'll see that it's conservative. And so it's a basic and rough multiplication between the investment that the UTP has as a social project with this conservative multiplier to reach this social value estimate. It's just a little bit like that.
Okay, great, thank you. And
simple and rough.
Yeah. Well, we have to start somewhere. We have another question. Another question, George. Are you planning to continue studying this and trying to apply it to all employees sometime in the future?
Well, we have this was applied for 2015, and I'm no longer studying in the area. I mean, this of course I'm very interested in this because I've been manager for 5.5 years, and I'm still connected to the program as advisor, but I'm no longer working pretty much in the field. What my real intention was, we felt a lot of aches to defend the program internally, and I also saw that with my GCVC colleagues and in all the conferences that we went, and then the summits. And so I decided to try and do this, because if we don't speak the management language, it's very difficult to maintain our resources. And this was a little bit my effort to try and reach that. I'm still volunteering, of course, but I don't think I will pursue to have a PhD or something on this.
Great. Well, it's a big contribution to the field. We have another question from Jerome at Marriott. He's saying, generally speaking, in order to find out the social value, do you have to rely on data collected by the community organizations that you're serving? Is that correct? Do you have to rely on their data to come up with the social value?
Yeah, well, I would say so. I mean, you need to get these multipliers, these returns on investment from the social projects. So you need to have data from these social organizations. What I did was I bypassed a little bit that, because I went directly to some published data already on this cost-benefit analysis. But yes, in the end, for the social value, surely you will need to have some data from the social organizations, the NGOs.
Great. Okay.
Okay. So moving forward, these are the results in general. Still a lot of question marks, but already some numbers. This is an important slide because it puts these results into context. Here are the main numbers of the program. Here are the main numbers that we found. And in terms of potential social return on investment, our return of 3.6 is a little bit below what the IPM found in Tasmania. And also our value generated per volunteer is a lot lower than the Haldane model or the IPM model. It's very below. I mean, sometimes more than 10 times lower. So this shows us that we are not overreacting. Actually, I would say that we are underestimating still the value with these figures, but we are comfortable and they are conservative, and that's the important way to go. I mean, even if you look at the enhanced well-being, it's still an order of magnitude below what Haldane and the IPM found. So in terms of that direct costs and opportunity costs, it's a little bit in line with what IPM found. IPM and Haldane, they have a little bit more value per volunteer because they consider the value of informal volunteering. I mean, informal volunteering, which is the volunteering that the corporate volunteering program promotes or generates, is responsible for almost half of the value that Haldane considered. We don't have that still on this model. We don't have any figures for that. But still, even if we take out the informal volunteering of the IPM or Haldane, we would still have a very a lot lower value generated per volunteer. So this part is important for us to understand that these results are conservative and very likely underestimated. So in the end, the findings is that we have a model that can be specific for corporate volunteering. It's broader, it gives us a larger picture, and perhaps it will allow us for improved benchmarking in the future. This graphic here of the iceberg, it's I would say the main picture of this whole webinar. I mean, we have a whole value of 2.8 million euros, and the economic value, which is the one that has an international methodology for it, doesn't account for not even 5% of the whole value that we're talking about. So it's crucial to go beyond the economic value to get a clearer and more real notion of the value generated. In terms of numbers, we found a minimum value generation of 3.5 euros per euro invested by EDP. We have a potential return on granted volunteer hour of almost 6, a whole value that is more than 22 times larger than just economic value. So we found also that volunteering is an important tool in skills development, and it has high value for workers. Of course, this study has a lot of limitations and simplifications. We have overlapping of some value dimensions. We have metrics and quantification of several value dimensions are not yet available. We still have a lot of question marks. There's no informal volunteering measurement. The multipliers for the determination of social value are still not very robust. The EDP data collection is not fully homogenized, which we had to extrapolate in some cases, and we didn't have data for the investment in Spain, but it was not a very big limitation because the operations there are smaller. So for the future, it would be important to have a glossary and framework for reporting corporate volunteering and certification that we're all talking the same language. Some research on the effectiveness of the training through volunteering, comparing it with the training through internal training units would be very important, because I mean, EDP just for skills development of leadership and communication has €1 million per year, which is a lot more than what it invests in corporate volunteering. So it would be very good to have a partnership with the training unit here in EDP to have some synergies. It would be important to applicate the well-being evaluation approach in Portugal, because we still don't have that. We need more investigation on the value dimensions and more robust tools, and also more investigation on the social value analysis. So in the end, our idea is this is what we had. This is what we now can see a little bit better, but still very blurry. And in the end, this is what we want to have in the future, which is a lot of happy faces and companies involved with the communities. So thank you very much for your attention. And any more questions, I'm here. You can find here also the links to the publications. The article is in both of them. So let me know your comments and more questions, please.
Thanks so much, Jorge. That was terrific. And you've really made an important contribution to the field and have been generous about sharing the details with us. the handout section of the webinar has a PDF of your slides and also of your article that members can download. And we do have another question here, which is, given your study, this GCVC member is asking, after the team at EDP reviewed your findings, did they do anything different? For example, did they invest more in corporate volunteering yet?
Well, not yet. Yet is the real answer. Not yet, especially because in the last year, DDP is reshuffling and restructuring our volunteering strategy. So we are now more aligned with HR. We are more aligned with diversity policies. And we're also more aligned with the emergency aid or emergency response. But still, I would say that this work has a lot to bring into the company yet in terms of fine-tuning new directions.
Great. Oh, again, we appreciate you sharing, and hopefully you'll keep us posted. And I trust you don't mind people getting in touch with you.
No, of course not.
To ask more questions.
Feel free.
Great. Good. Thank you so much. And
it's important. It's important that everyone tries to do their own small math, even if just for the economic value. I mean, I would say that it would be fairly easy. Because you just need to have the amount of hours per type of work that you're doing, and you can take it from there and start to have a better notion of how much value that can bring.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jorge. And I just want to say that we will have our next GCVC webinar in either April or May. If members have particular topics they want covered, just let me know. And we have in-person meetings June 20 and 21 in Atlanta, and October 16 and 17 in Augsburg, Germany, just before our World Volunteer Conference. So I look forward to seeing everyone there. And we also have our GCVC member survey. If you haven't completed it, you have a little bit more time. And this will help to populate our GCVC member database and inform a report that we're doing on GCVC members' involvement in the Sustainable Development Goals. So lots going on, and look forward to seeing everybody, hearing from everyone. And thank you once again, Jorge. We really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope it wasn't very dense. I think I've tried to show in detail what we have, because I know that this is a very interested audience, especially in how do we calculate, how do we find arguments, how do we attribute values. I've tried to keep it as lighter as possible, but if you have time, please go through the publication and you'll get more information on it. And if you need, just feel free to contact me, and either through LinkedIn or directly through my email at EDP. Okay.
Great. We have just a few more comments and questions, lots of thank yous, and members are saying they don't have questions now, but they're going to dig deeper into your presentation and article. So thanks again.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.